Detective Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a crime film called Dirty Pretty Things. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. A young cab driver named Okwe searches for his next customer at the London City Airport. Okwe is a kind, mild-mannered man juggling several jobs in London, where he lives as an illegal immigrant. Because of this, he always finds himself in shady dealings. One evening, before meeting his boss at the cab company, he hands a newly falsified ID to a friend and customer of his. He then visits his boss and the man greets Okwe by unzipping his pants and showing him his groin. His boss tells him that he's contracted some sort of infection and asks for his help, calling Okwe a doctor. He gives him some medical advice, recommending him to take amoxicillin for the infection, but his boss starts asking for the pills. Okwe refuses at first, asserting that he's not a doctor, but his boss manages to convince him. In exchange, he provides Okwe more opportunities to earn money as a driver by giving him exclusive access to the passengers in South London. Okwe then leaves and goes to his other job at the Baltic Hotel, where he works as a receptionist. Okwe is greeted by the friendly doorman Ivan as he enters the hotel. While he's at the front desk, a young Turkish woman named Şenay Jelik comes in. Okwe sees her coming in from the security cameras and moves to approach her. She intentionally drops her keys, leaving Okwe to come and pick them up. Okwe then asks Şenay if he can cook lunch for her that day, but she refuses. With that, Okwe returns to his desk, and Ivan teasingly asks if the two are having an affair. He denies this, saying that he mostly stays there when Şenay is away. Later, a call girl comes down from the stairs to the hotel lobby. She flirtatiously teases Okwe, telling him that he should check on the room. The call girl leaves, and Okwe goes to inspect the room. There, he sees a clogged toilet overflowing with water, so he uses a bent hanger to unclog it. Suddenly, Okwe hits something flesh-like, and blood starts to surface from the water. After covering his arm with a plastic bag, he takes out the source of the clogging, then realizes that it's a human heart. Okwe is shocked by the whole thing, but he decides to place it in a bag and tell his boss Sneaky. Sneaky drives up to the hotel and demands for Ivan, who's slacking off and smoking a cigarette in the lobby. After parking his car, he scolds his employees when he sees trash lying on the ground. As he enters his office, Okwe follows him while still holding the plastic bag. He reports that he found the human heart in one of the rooms and urges Sneaky to call the police. Sneaky agrees to do so, but he insists that Okwe should file the report. Knowing that he's an illegal immigrant, Sneaky isn't surprised when Okwe refuses to speak with the authorities. Still, he emphasizes that the hotel business is about strangers and that the less they know, the better. Sneaky tries to give him some cash for his troubles, but Okwe refuses and leaves. Okwe heads to Şenay's apartment, where he fails to get any sleep. Instead, he goes out to visit his friend Guo Yi at the mortuary. Guo Yi announces that he now has a good move that he thought of for their ongoing chess match. He shows him the move, and Okwe approves of it. However, he still beats Guo Yi with ease in the next 3 moves. Okwe then tells Guo Yi about the human heart incident. He tries to seek an explanation for it, and Guo Yi suspects that someone must have brought the heart with them. He also advises Okwe not to ask too many questions, especially since he's an illegal immigrant there. Just then, a corpse comes in for Guo Yi, and he gives Okwe the amoxicillin for his boss before he leaves. Okwe goes down to the wet market and purchases khat, an herbal stimulant akin to methamphetamine. It's through this that he's able to stay awake and juggle both his day and night jobs. He then spots Şenay as she's walking by. She avoids him on the street and heads straight to her apartment, where the two of them live together. Şenay panics, warning him to be more cautious, and Okwe tells her that she should have her key duplicated to make it easier for him to enter the place. Afterward, Okwe prepares lunch for Şenay. He asks her if she cleaned the 5th floor, which is where he found the human heart. She, however, disregards the question. The two share a meal, and this is when Şenay discovers that Okwe was a trained doctor in his home country but is forced to be a driver in London. Later on, Okwe delivers the amoxicillin pills to his boss, who reports that 3 of his men also got the disease. Okwe jokes, saying that the woman was a popular lady. His boss then asks him for more of the pills. One evening in the hotel, Okwe receives a food order from one of the rooms. He tells them the kitchen is closed, but Ivan stops him. He then instructs Okwe to prepare the meal and keep the extra cash for himself. Later that night, he visits the room where he found the human heart. Okwe is then startled when the call girl and one of her customers enter the room. He hides in the bathroom behind the shower curtain, and from there, he witnesses the customer hitting the call girl. In retaliation, the woman sprays the man with mace. Finally, Okwe reveals himself and firmly tells the man to leave. He checks if the woman has a concussion, surprising her when he detects that she doesn't. After making an offhanded accusation of him spying on her, she introduces herself as Juliet. He reasons that he was just making sure that the blockage hasn't returned, then advises her to go home and rest. With that, the two say their goodbyes. One afternoon, when Okwe was ironing his clothes at Shania's place, immigration agents start barging in Shania's door. Okwe hides and the two agents start ransacking and searching the place. They tell Shania that she's still not allowed to be employed in any establishment. Their suspicions then rise as they find matches for the Baltic Hotel, along with Okwe's shoes. Okwe nearly gets caught, but he manages to escape through the bathroom window. The following evening, the immigration agents arrive at the hotel, asking Okwe at the front desk for Shania. Okwe is tremendously anxious, knowing fully well that if they find Shania with a job, she will be deported. He then calls Ivan to stop Shania, but he's currently in the storage room with Juliet. Right before Shania could enter the hotel, Ivan steps out, intercepting her arrival. The day after, Shania tells Okwe that she found another job at a factory. He feels guilty and responsible for Shania losing her job, and he then goes to Sneaky to collect her pay. There, Okwe is shocked to find a man aching in pain. He tries to speak with him, but they aren't able to communicate in a common language. Sneaky comes into the room, nonchalantly ignores the suffering man, and gives Okwe Shania's final pay. Before leaving, Okwe inspects the man's wounds, and he sees that he has an infected wound from a botched kidney operation. Okwe demands that they go to a hospital, but Sneaky says that they won't go to one for fear of being deported. Because of this, Okwe spends his day sneaking into a hospital and stealing medical equipment. He goes to operate on the man's wound, then proceeds to give him the stolen medicine. Here, he meets a young girl who interprets for the immigrant family. She says that they sold his kidney to get citizenship in London and that the operation was done in the hotel. Later, Okwe goes to meet Shania, who's been waiting for him for over an hour. After giving her the pay, he tells her that he'll collect his things and leave her apartment for fear of endangering her any further. Shania advises Okwe to be cautious about chewing caught leaves, then Okwe leaves the store. For her own safety, he warns her to stay away from him. Later on, Okwe asks for Guo Yi's help to find a place to stay. Guo Yi gives Okwe the keys to the mortuary and tells him to stay there at night when no one else is around. Curious about Okwe's medical skills, Sneaky reaches out to one of his contacts to learn more about him. Meanwhile, at Shania's workplace, immigration barges in once again to search for her. The workers hide from the police, while the factory owner stays behind to answer the police's questions. The owner denies knowing Shania, and later on, he blackmails her. He threatens to report her to the immigration agents if she doesn't perform obscene favors for him. Back at the hotel, Okwe is surprised when Sneaky calls him by his full name. After his digging earlier, he had discovered that Okwe is a doctor certified by the Nigerian government. Sneaky then makes Okwe an offer to be the surgeon for his illegal organ business, but in exchange, he and Shania will receive a passport so they can either leave London or stay as legal citizens. Despite Okwe's refusals, Sneaky continually persuades him. One evening, all the cod is finally getting to Okwe, and he's starting to experience blackouts from his excessive consumption. He wakes up to the sound of an alarm clock going off, and he peruses his desk for a letter that's addressed to him. The letter came from Sneaky, and it contains a picture of an 8-year-old girl. He then receives a call from Sneaky, who tells him that the little girl is dying. Her family's looking to buy a kidney, but the doctor they have is no good. If he messes up again, they'll have another heart down the toilet. Sneaky wants Okwe to help her, then comments on the irony of being an evil man who wants to save the girl's life. Deeply conflicted, Okwe could only hang the phone up. Right after, he gets a call from a crying Shania. She pleads with Okwe to go ahead with what Sneaky wants in order to get a passport. That morning, Okwe goes to Shania's place, only to find her in tears while frantically dancing to music. Okwe is confused with Shania's behavior, and she only tells him that she wants to leave the factory and go to America. When Okwe realizes what she's getting at, he yells at her to stay away from Sneaky, while she desperately retorts that it's just like taking out a tooth. Okwe raises his voice, trying to make her understand that they'll just gut her like a fish because she's poor and leave the rest of her to rot. Shania walks away after telling him that one of the laundry girls did it, and now she's free. Okwe reminds her that others are dead, but Shania tells him that they're free, too. Grim, Okwe asks her what her god would say, but Shania bitterly answers that her god no longer speaks with her. Finally, she sits down, and with tears still in her eyes, she reveals that her boss blackmails and abuses her. Later on, during lunch in Shania's workplace, she goes into the bathroom with her boss. Once again, he blackmails her into pleasuring him. This time, however, she bites his member hard and escapes from the factory, stealing a few clothes on her way out. Okway reports to the cab company, where his boss tells him to go see Shania, who is waiting for him in the back room. There, Shania tells Okway what happened with her boss at the factory, and she breaks down, crying in his arms. He takes Shania to the mortuary so she could have a temporary place to stay. With Shania settled, Okway leaves and goes to his job at the hotel. That evening, he receives a call to bring room service on the 5th floor. In the room, he is greeted by Sneaky and the latest kidney seller. The young African woman tries to solemnly persuade Okway to operate on her in order to receive the passport. Finally, Okway has had enough, and he pins Sneaky to the wall while pointing a scalpel at him. Unmoved, Sneaky only mocks him, asking if he thinks that the world is wrong and he's right. Then, he provokes him, asking if Okway will cut him up and flush him down. At this point, Okway's reached his limit. He storms out of the room, angrily removes his work clothes, then goes to see Shania. Back at the mortuary, Okway is surprised to find Guo Yi and Shania waiting for him with Shania out in the cold, freaking out about the dead bodies inside. Guo Yi then hands Okway an address in Chinatown where the two of them can stay. Before leaving, Guo Yi advises Okway, letting him know that Shania is in love with him. Okway then takes Shania to the cemetery, where he tells her that that's where he goes to remember his wife. With that, he asks her to let go of love and focus only on survival. Okway gives her the address of the room in Chinatown and departs. This leaves Shania heartbroken, and she stops following Okway. Now that he's gone, Shania decides to go to Sneaky to have her kidney sold. In the hotel room, Shania and Sneaky make preparations for her new fake passport. He takes advantage of the woman's desperation, forcing her to sleep with him. Hopeless, Shania could only agree to Sneaky's terms and gives up her chastity to him. Later that night, Okway visits Shania, who asks him for a morning after pill. Realizing what happened, Okway leaves the room and goes to stop Sneaky at the parking lot before he takes off. Solemn, Okway tells him that he will not allow him to butcher Shania, and he demands to perform the operation himself. In turn, he wants a passport and a new identity. Sneaky agrees, and Okway begins to make preparations with the help of his friends. That night, Juliet stops by Shania's room and introduces herself as Okway's friend. Juliet gives Shania the morning after pills, and the two become friends. During the operation, Okway has set up the room and the equipment with Shania lying unconscious at a table. He explains he sedated Shania and he will need Sneaky's assistance during the operation. For this, he gives Sneaky a bottle of beer to keep his hands stable. Suddenly, Sneaky falls over after drinking the beer. Okway gives the signal to Shania, and she gets up to help Okway turn the tables on Sneaky, and operate on him instead. Juliet then comes in with a pack of ice and assists with the operation while Guo Yi stands by in the front entrance with his car for a quick getaway. After extracting the kidney, Okway, Juliet, and Shania move to give the kidney to the buyer in the parking lot. The buyer then hands them the money, and after the transaction, they make their way to Guo Yi. Okway hands Juliet her share of the money, then Guo Yi takes Okway and Shania to the airport. In the car, Okway explains that he was forced to flee his home country after being falsely accused of murdering his wife, leaving behind his 7-year-old daughter in Laos. Because of this, Okway sorrowfully tells Shania that he can't go with her to New York. He needs to be with his daughter now that he has a new identity. They arrive at the airport, and Okway says goodbye to his friend Guo Yi. There, the two say their final goodbyes to one another, and Shania hands Okway the address of her sister's cafe in New York. As Shania boards the plane, they look at each other from a distance and mouth the words "I love you" to one another. Afterward, Okway goes to a telephone and calls his daughter in Laos. With tears in his eyes, he tells her that he's finally coming home. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.